Let's continue now to explore an elementary vocabulary useful to address space. In contemporary societies, realities can be classified into three major categories: actors, objects, and environments. Let's define each of these terms. Actors are the opposite of agents. The notion of actor means that societies are animated by operators who are endowed with a strategic competence. The emergence of the actor in social sciences has also been called the pragmatic turn. Its concrete significance is namely that individuals can be actors of their lives, certainly not at 100% level, but not at 0% either. In spite of its oversimplicity, the image of a moving cursor can be useful as it makes the variability of a given actor's power and capabilities easily understandable. Besides, actors are actors also because of their reflexivity, which allows them to take advantage of situations where they cannot get everything, but have to arbitrate between different imperfect options. This approach is actually underpinned by the criticism of the structuralist paradigm, which was dominant in the social sciences of the 1960s and 70s. Structuralism does not recognize the existence of actors, but only of agents. Structuralist approaches encompass four major theoretical bodies: Marxism, psychoanalysis, structural anthropology, which gave birth to culturalism, and structural linguistics. After several attempts to impose themselves, separately or together, as an orthodoxy in social sciences, these theories have experienced a dramatic decline. However, in the North American mainstream in geography or sociology, the structuralist approach is still deep-rooted. It is often self-denominated as post-structuralist, but it could be called neo-structuralism because new structures such as race or gender have been added to the traditional notion of class in the Marxist approach. A generalization of the ahistorical vision proposed by structural anthropology has also been incorporated through the polysemic and slippery term of culture. If we look at what social sciences consider as dynamic realities, objects are also something new. The philosopher Bruno Latour uses the term actants to make more tangible the idea that manufactured items, natural, non-human realities, or mental and immaterial realities are active in social interactions. In the case of artifacts or machines, as well as for institutional realities such as organizations, religions, or political ideologies, their creators' intentions are obviously embedded in their very flesh and interact with users' intentionality. However, even in the case of objects coming from the biophysical worlds, we find realities that are not intentional at their starting point, but which are included in systems of social actions. For instance, a bear is not an actor and is not part of the same intentional complex if it lives in the wild, in a natural reserve, in a zoo, or in a circus. But in each case, it plays an active role related to the performance of different human actors involved. Finally, the notion of environment can seem neutral and banal, but it's significant by its own existence. The decisive point is that an environment is approached on the same level as actors and objects. An environment is an encompassing reality that conditions, partially determines, and prefigures the realities, objects, and actors it encompasses. But these encompassed realities are active too and can modify the environment. In other terms, an environment can condition the actors, but actors can destroy an environment. Societies are, of course, environments, but the components of our societies, such as a working place or a family, can also be considered environments. Space is an environment. There are natural environments, but there are also purely artificial ones. As we can see in this diagram, there are different combinations of the relationship between an individual actor and the environment the society as a whole represents. At one extreme, milieu, a weak actor needs society, embodied in welfare state or public policies, to survive. At the other extreme, the citizen actor maximizes their capacities in order to try and change the societal environment through political agency. In between, we find climates and affordances where the respective powers of actors and the environment are more balanced. Till now, we have used space as a generic term, meaning any kind of realities defined by distance relations between other realities. At this stage, it can be useful to distinguish space and spatiality. Space is an environment defined by relations of distance between its components and with other spaces. Spatiality, the part of human agency related to distance relations. Thus, space is spatial as an environment, and spatiality is spatial as a set of actions, as agency. Spaces impose their conditions to actors, and actors develop spatialities that modify those spaces. The notion of geographicity appears then as an overarching concept, encompassing both space and spatiality. Geographicity can be defined as the spatial dimension of the social worlds, that is, human worlds. An important distinction should be made now between place and area. A place is a type of space in which distance is non-relevant. An area is a set of places separated by a relevant distance. From micro-local situations to the world, any space can be seen either as a place or as an area. For instance, a city is a place if it is addressed as a whole, interurban approach, but it is an area when understood as a set of districts or neighborhoods, intra-urban approach. This distinction is fundamental because it gives a concrete, pragmatic significance to scale thresholds. We switch from a level to another when we consider, as in the case of interurban, that what was a place becomes an area, downscaling, or what was an area becomes a place, upscaling. Scale is a relation between the size of spatial realities and other characteristics of these realities. It defines significant thresholds that make a space switch from place to area. A matrix is a way of measuring and managing distance. There exists an infinity of metrics. We can classify the different categories of metrics from their internal style or from the perspective of their limits. Traditional geography was obsessed with a country model, that is to say, a territory locked by clear-cut borders. But many other types of spaces exist. We can observe that there are many other combinations of metrics. Territories and networks are the simplest and the most significant distinctions between spaces. Finally, everything in a society has a spatial dimension, but society possesses other dimensions. Substance identifies the non-spatial part of spatial realities. Substance matters. The space generated by a company is not the space of an individual or of a state. A major distinction among substances is between society, social world as totality, and social world as a component of a society. Scale, metrics, and substance are interrelated. You can't define one of them without considering the others. Taken together, They represent the minimal compulsory set of attributes of any space or spatiality. In other words, it's impossible to define an elementary spatial configuration or chorotype without any of the three components. If we consider now how spaces interact with each other, we can identify three major categories of interspatialities. Interface is the most classic. It connects horizontally juxtaposed spaces. An example, two countries meeting each other at their joint border. The second interspatiality is nesting. It's characterized by the inclusion of one space in another larger space, like Russian dolls. The arrangement of political territories is a common nesting configuration. In the case of federal systems, we have a mimetic, non-hierarchical nesting. As a matter of fact, each tier reproduces the same kind of institutions as below and above and enjoys comparable competencies. Finally, co-spatiality is a vertical connection between different spatial layers through connectors, for instance, a railway network and a city, thanks to a railway station. We can imagine a superposition of layers without connectors, and in this case, co-spatiality doesn't occur. For instance, individual layers in a city may not interact if there are no opportunities for them to do so. In this case, the city of each individual cannot become the city of all. Similarly, the global economic network and the territorial partition of states are not directly connected. They are not co-spatial. We will see in session 6 that synchronization may be seen as a fourth category of interspatiality. So far, we have placed some cornerstones that help us to address the spatial dimension of social worlds. By doing this, we have taken on, in an implicit way, a particular concept of space which underpins these first statements. This table shows that, historically, conceptions of space have been controversial on two major points. The first one is about the absolute or relative nature of space. Is space a pre-existing box where things are located, or is space a changing configuration linked to what is spatialized? The second opposition is about the positional or relational character of space. Will the measurement of a space be the same, carried out, for instance, through Euclidean geometry, independently from interactions between the realities that compose it? Or is redefining the rules of measurement each time we observe a new set of spatially interacting realities required? These debates were very active in the 17th and 18th centuries, but eventually the practice of scientific research settled the argument. As the table shows, although contemporary social sciences of space have not completely converged on these fundamental conceptualizations, we can contend that, by and large, the relative relational conception, that of Leibniz, has clearly got an overwhelming cognitive advantage because it is consistent with a dimensional approach to social realities. Space is a dimension that, as others, goes through every single social reality. The Leibnizian approach to space is also clearly dominant in relativist physics.